get started. Like we have critical mass. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I hope those of you who had a snow day enjoyed it. And I hope those of you that didn't are staying safe, etc. So let's go ahead and jump right into the agenda. The first things are the information only items. Are there any comments or questions on the information only items from the committee? All right, I just had one quick question, and that was for the purchase order for scenario learning for Vector Solutions. Just was wondering, because I know Vector Solution does a lot of training things. Is the Safe Schools online training a particular thing, or is this for a variety of training things?
It's our online training modules, Mr. Wilcox, similar to some of the universities that have those things like, OSHA and things of that sort. So It really is our tool to do some of our online training.
Okay,
offering modules.
I'm wondering because I did a vector training earlier today around schools, school safety in the universities, etc. So that's for all of their things, or do you all select a certain amount of those?
Right. So right now, it's specifically what you see in front of you is specifically for that. We are planning to expand some of the offering. They do some work, with our with grade 6, 8, and then there's some other professional development offerings in the future that we will be looking at. But for this particular item, it's specifically about our online modules, training modules.
Right. Thank you very much for answering that. We'll move on into the agreements. The first one is an agreement with, I believe it's Labas Consulting. Mr. Mendia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm bringing forth an agreement with Labas Incorporated to conduct an external review of our bilingual and multilingual learners programs for the New Haven Public Schools. As part of this agreement, it does call for both quantitative and a qualitative data analysis in terms of how our students are performing. And in addition, there will be a series of focus groups taking place in addition to school visits and a couple of focus groups with different parents. And again, the intention is to determine, in terms of the programming that we provide for our multilingual learners.
Great, thank you very much. Are there comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for presenting. Is this a kind of a required review and audit, or is this something we're doing on our own initiative, or both?
So this is something that we are doing on our own initiative. I mean, annually we are to conduct, an evaluation for Title III and the bilingual grants. So we do have an internal review process, but at this timing point, we determined that it would be a good idea to have an external evaluator who would be able to inform the work ahead of us.
Great, thank you. I look forward to learning what our strengths are, what our opportunities are after this is done. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 2, which is an agreement with Learn Regional Educational Service Center. Ms. Moore?
I'm going to be taking that one, Mr. Wilcox. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is a agreement with Learn to do really kind of threefold at Hill House. Learn will be supporting not only staff, but the leadership team in developing an instructional framework. The focus will be primarily working with each academic department along with the academic team to develop the instructional framework. In addition to that, the team from Learn will also be working with the leaders in the building to support them in support of the work, as well as develop their instructional as it comes to fruition. They're also going to be supporting the teachers in how to instruct in a 90-minute block. And it'll be centered around this instructional framework that they develop with the staff. And then the third component of the agreement is some work around restorative practices and culturally responsive teaching approach to increase student engagement and decrease chronic absenteeism. The contract covers from the end of January through June, and it's on average about 2 to 3 times a week per month, each week per month.
All right. Thank you. Are there comments or questions from the community on this? My one question was just in the selection of this. I understand that this is from the one of the regional education service centers, and so they're, it's kind of streamlined to select them. I was just wondering, whereas building staff also involved in the selection of this? I mean, by building staff, I mean the teachers or other staff that are going to be receiving this training.
We did bring it to the leadership team and members of SPMT at the beginning of the year. The one reason why we fell on with Learn or contracted them is that they've done similar work in other larger districts like Waterbury, New London, New Britain as well.
Okay. And then my final question was, I'm trying to recall if we've done this type of training with them at other schools in the district, or is this going to be like a new thing for us?
I'm not aware if they've been used in the past at other high schools. I don't know if Dr. White can answer that question.
To the best of my knowledge, no, but similar programs have come out of the various rests to support the learning. So it's not unprecedented.
Okay, so it sounds like, seeing how successful it is at Hill House, this might translate on to other schools, either using them or train the trainer stuff happening, since that involves some of the training happening.
Yeah, the amount of work that they're going to be doing at Hill House is pretty intensive over the next 6 months. So we're going to see how it goes. And to your point, this could be potentially some future work in the district as well.
All right, thank you. Seeing and hearing no other questions from the committee, we'll move on to number 3, which is an agreement with Trifecta. Is Ms. Gethings available or somebody to speak?
I can speak to that as well. I don't know if Ms. Gethings is on, but this is similar to the same types of contracts that we're using in other schools to support programming.
Okay, and specifically, this is the outdoor gardening classroom.
Correct.
And
at Worthington. Yes, at Worthington Hooker. They're doing similar work at other buildings. I believe Ms. Strand is on. HSC has used them. Others, elementary schools have used them as well.
Okay, and they're a sole source provider with the sole source letter from purchasing. So any comments or questions related to this item from the committee? Dr. Yarborough?
Yes. How many schools are utilizing Trifecta right now?
I know it's HSC, Barnard, now Hooker. I feel like Sound might have a connection to them, but I'm not sure.
I was just going to say, I think Sound also has a connection, and I believe Celentano is also looking to contract with them as well.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if there's any advantage to working as a group with them versus these individual contracts.
Oh, as a cost savings, you mean, Dr. Yarborough?
As a cost savings, as kind of group training or curriculum for the district or schools that would be interested. Like, I'm unsure how much replicate work is being done by individual schools.
Yeah.
Contracting. It does seem like they're providing a benefit and an enrichment since schools are kind of multiplying.
Yeah.
We can definitely take a look at that. I know the funding sources and how the schools fund them. I don't know, Pat, if you can answer that question, if that's the reason why we do separately, or because I know like Carrie funds them through SIG, Worthington Hooker may fund them through a different grant. I'm not sure.
It has been related to the funding. But we could take a look at that for the future.
I know that I've been using SIG. I've also been working with Trifecta on some other grants so that we can sustain it after SIG. They're really great partners and are interested in not just providing these resources, but as you all know, I'm working with them to offer a course at HSC this coming semester that we're really excited about. Bob McCain was the lead on bringing them to the district.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Negron?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Dr. Yarborough for bringing that up. That is something that I do want to take a look at, because I think it would be, number one, more like time efficient as it relates to bringing them into committee. But also I do know that we have to sort of like problem solve around any issues that have been brought up related to the funding sources. So that is something that we're going to look to explore. But again, I'm just glad to hear that that would be something of interest to you and maybe other members of the board.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Those sounds like great suggestions. Not just with this vendor, but with any, where we're going to be doing multiple projects. Get the group rate. All right, is there any other on this item from the committee on this? Hearing, seeing none, let's move on to number 4, an agreement with Noble Story Group. Ms. Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's warm and safe. So this is a contract, an agreement with Noble Story Group that would provide training for the executive team, which I'm a part of, in the realm of building internal capacity. Building internal capacity. And it's really around developing a framework and adaptive leadership grounded in emotional intelligence, and really bringing that to our work every day. They would be working with the entire executive team on this model. And then I would also be receiving a certification coach to continue to turnkey this. This is an investment in our executive leadership team at the district level. It will build internal capacity for all of the folks who work directly with our 40 schools, especially our assistant superintendents and directors. We are really trying to create a culture of learning in direct alignment with our school improvement, our strategic plan. I don't know if you guys, and this is also in response to, our need to grow as leaders, as district leaders, but as well as I'm on the retention committee. And when we looked at our data for exit surveys from the folks who took them and why they're leaving the district, there was some data in there that showed that, we can also do some work around coaching and things like that with our building leaders, as well as our district leaders.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, just a comment. I appreciate you thinking about and working in kind of the certification and the ongoing work that you will be able to provide with the district. So thank you for not only thinking about receiving the training, but how you can bring it to a level personally and professionally to be able to offer it continuously for our district. So thank you for that thought.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. My question was just in the process of selecting this vendor, what went into that? And then the second part was, so this is for executive team, and I was just wondering how far does that include? So getting a broader sense of exactly who we're talking about.
So we've worked with the Leadership Academy previously, where we didn't necessarily with our previous administration. We've also worked with and I did interviews and I spoke to them about what we were looking for, what we needed in order to grow and turnkey this coaching and learning in a model to make sure that we're really focusing on our adaptive leadership challenges. You know, a lot of sometimes it's technical, like, oh, the roof is leaking, we got to go fix that. Oh, you know, this parent's upset about this, but we really need to dive deeper into the emotional intelligence piece to not only build our own capacity, but to help build our principals, our assistant principals, our teacher leaders. So down the line vision for that is that as we work, we do this work with the executive team, it does then definitely trickle down to our principals, our assistant principals, and then I will also have the training to continue to build that, to continue that work as the years go on, because I'm not going anywhere. So that is kind of where I came from that lens. And then to answer your question in terms of the executive team consists of the superintendents, the 4 assistant supes, our COO, CFO, myself as a director, the director of multilingual learners, director of early childhood, our director of security. I think there's about 14 people. I think if I missed a few on this team, but again, all the members are in direct support of our building leaders, and they can also use this training to work with the members in their department and build capacity within their departments as well.
All right,
So
thank you.
I can send you the list of all the members. I think I hit everybody, but it's the 5 directors, the assistant superintendents, COO, CFO, and the superintendent.
All right, so it's the official executive team, all the members. I think they're all listed on the website.
Yes.
Dr. Negron?
Yes, I just wanted to add, Edith, you missed also our director of human resource.
Oh, yes.
Athletics. So again, it is the entire executive team. And I want to reiterate, and Edith also commend her for the research that she did. This is all about my vision for building a learning organization. So if we're asking students to learn and take advantage of what we teach, that needs to happen at all layers of the organization, starting with me. Again, we are never done learning, and I am trying to make sure that all layers of the organization also understand how it is that we approach coaching, mentoring, and all of those pieces that we know emotional intelligence plays such a huge role. So that is the goal and the vision for this work.
All right, thank you for further elaborating on it. I did, because this is a relatively new one. We're often investing in training for various staff. We just talked about one at Hill House training, etc. So this is relatively novel to have the executive team training. So I did look into this a lot. So it's great to hear how it's fitting into the vision and the levels of staff and thinking about where this is going to go. My final question is, this vendor I know has a lot of experience through charter schools and things like that. I just was wondering if you all, when you had your conversations with them about how much they're working with public school systems, and
Yes.
is this an area where that matters? I mean,
So that was very important to us. And not only does Mr. Taylor, he also has experience in public schools, but the coaches that will be working with us have extensive experience working in the public school sector. And that was a clear piece for us that, how does this work? So he does have a host of coaches, and I was able to meet with Dr. Negron and select coaches that really meet the needs of our executive team and that are in alignment with where the vision that Dr. Negron outlined.
all right, thank you. I guess just a final thing is, if we could, Ms. DeMayo, if we could just set I think it'd be interesting to hear back how this went some point in the future. So I don't know what the appropriate time period is. I guess this runs through most of June. So maybe, I don't know, in July or August, let's just kind of talk about how this worked, what was learned, how you all see it go.
Absolutely, and more than happy to share, our evaluations and things like that.
Wonderful. Why don't we pencil it in maybe sometime in July or one of the July meetings, please, Ms. DeMayo.
Mr. Wilcox, I believe
Yes.
our last session, when we looked at the calendar, might take us into July, so I would ask that we go a little further out. Because
Okay,
we're trying to fit in all the sessions, and it's going to mean having to have people block off time in the summer for this work to happen.
We have,
Okay.
bread, left over.
all right, so somebody doesn't have someone's not muted.
I took care of it.
Okay, so, all right, so thank you, that sounds great. So yeah, let's go with August, or let's
September.
pencil it in for the August meeting, and then we can always move it from there, but at least it's on there as a reminder. Thank you very much. Anything else on this item, Dr. Yarborough? No? All right, so let's go on to number 5, an amendment to the agreement with Shine Early Learning. Ms. Derwin?
Good afternoon. This is an amendment with Shine Early Learning, the consulting firm that is currently working with Head Start. And this is to expand their scope of services to do trainings with the ERSI component and the health component, with the goal of creating new policies and procedures to gain efficiencies in seating students and increasing enrollment within the program.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? All right, and I'll just add that this enrollment plan is pretty key. And there's certainly funds for this in the Head Start accounts. And so anything we can do to get our enrollment up is going to be a major focus. I'm trying to remember, I think we're at 75% enrollment or so. And
Yes,
the goal is 90, 95. What's the, I'm trying to
we
remember.
have to, our fully funded enrollment currently is 531. With our recompetition, we've lowered that number considerably. We need to be at 97.5% by October 7th of next year.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work to be done.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you and your team for doing that work. Hearing and seeing nothing else on this one, let's move on to number 6, which is an amendment. It looks like 6, 7, and 8 are related to school readiness. So maybe we could deal with these as a group. Ms. Diaz-Valencia?
She
Or
isn't.
Ms. Derwin?
Yeah, I could speak to that for her. Basically, these are adjustments that have come as a result of the reduction in slots by the Office of Early Childhood for school readiness to the city of New Haven. And as a result of this, slots have been redistributed by the vote of the New Haven Early Childhood Council to the various entities in the city. So with these, spaces have either decreased in certain organizations like Catholic Charities. They've been given to Farnham. There's been an increase in 5 spaces and a reduction also at St. Aidan's. So there were 10 that went through on the last F&O. So it's all a reorganization of the slots and the appropriate adjustment in funding as a result.
All right, thank you. And yeah, so that's the funding levels are set by the state per person, the selection of the vendors in terms of the daycares or the preschool or nursery school programs are selected by the New Haven Early Childhood Council. We're kind of a pass through for these things. So, okay. Are there comments or questions related to this? I had none either. So We'll move on to number 9, which is an agreement with Foundation for the Arts and Trauma. Ms. Strand?
Hi, this is the same work, just with a different funding source. We are going to be using current year SIG funds so that we can keep having the clinicians from ALIVE, the Arts and Trauma Foundation, in our school, doing quick check-ins with students, working with our foundation seminar groups, and helping us with our SSST and other things that we do to support students' well-being and mental health.
Okay, so this is already the previously approved work. This is just a change in the funding.
Yeah, I put $13,000 on carryover SIG, and that was to get us started at the beginning of the year, and now we're moving on to current year SIG.
Okay. So this is a new,
There was a gap between when the carryover SIG contract ran out and the new SIG funding was available. So
Okay.
that's why I couldn't just do an amendment. I had to do a new agreement.
all right, but the total amount, overall amount's not changing?
For
is-
this
or this
one,
amount-
this is the second contract, so it's
Got it.
8,000 total, 13,000 on the first leg of things, and then 67,000 on this one, which is the same as last year, just broken up into 2 pieces.
I understand now. Thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, just a question for how billing is done. Do we pay kind of the flat rate for the day, or by the number of kind of counseling sessions?
It's how many of the clinicians have been in the school for how many days, and they invoice us based on the records of that.
Okay.
There's a daily rate, or an hourly rate rather, the $112.75 per clinician per hour. So it depends on who's in the building and for how long.
Okay. Thank you. What information do we have on us maximizing their time in terms of having our students or others who are to meet with them actually meeting with them while they're in the building?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. I'm sorry.
Yes, are they working the whole time meeting with people?
Yes.
Are we actually maximizing their presence and kind of the skill set they're able to bring?
I can only, I know they work in a lot of schools. I can only speak to their work at HSC, but they're very busy. Their office is right next to mine. And while I come and go a lot throughout the day, I don't, tend to stay put very long, but it's very clear to me that they are always busy. We've had to institute a procedure where students who want to see them, they can't just come and access them because they're almost never just available. They have to go through our administrative assistant or email to get their check-ins, which is, that's great. It means that sometimes the on-demand service has a bit of a lag, but it does mean that they're busy and that they're being accessed and used well and widely in our school.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And we'll go ahead and move on to the contracts. The first one is an award of a contract. These are 2 contracts for Connecticut Custom Aquatics with different time periods. This, I think, is maybe our first, the first one is for this fiscal year, and the next one is for the next fiscal year. This might be our first fiscal year 25 agreement, but I might be incorrect on that. So these 2 contracts, Mr. Lane?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. Good evening, everyone. We're actually going to withdraw item number 2, Mr. Wilcox.
Okay.
That's actually a renewal for the contract, which is item number 1, and I don't believe that we can request a renewal on a contract that has not been approved by the Board of Education yet. So we'll put that on for the next F&O meeting after the full board approval of the contract itself.
Okay. So then let's talk about just the on-call swimming pool. Let's
Yes,
talk about number 1 then.
All right, thank you. This is award of contract 21914 with CT Custom Aquatics. This was awarded through a sealed bid process, and they were the lowest bidder. It's for $50,000, which is the allotment for the year, same as last year. And we awarded it to CT Custom Aquatics based on the lowest bidder for this particular bid.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you for presenting this. To clarify, they will serve all the 5 schools listed, or are they just assigned to a particular school?
They'll be assigned to serve all pools that are open. and running, and also provide the products that we use to sanitize the pools and maintain them.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
And I'll just say, because I was in the citywide building and stewardship committee meeting last Thursday, is that pool work is occurring and we're going to have more pools back online, it sounds like, over the next several months, which is good. Some of those were a long time coming, with major issues and funding questions and all sorts of things. So that's good news too. So we'll actually be utilizing this more than we are currently, although I know at least Hill House is up and running right now, and so on. But so that was good to hear. Some of these long-term projects are coming together. All right, so we're withdrawing number 2, and we'll look at it at a different time. So we'll move on into the purchase orders. The first one is for Power School, Ms. Joseph Lumpkin.
Good afternoon. I am really happy to present this all-in-one solution opportunity with Power School that supports our priority of reducing chronic absenteeism. This will add on to our current services, but it's going to focus explicitly on identifying and responding using AI and cloud services to students who are chronically absent or who are at risk for chronic absenteeism. In addition to identifying the students, what this helps us do is to have that immediate two-way communication in multiple languages to our families. It also gives us an opportunity to share with our families that depending on the level of attendance, we're able to access research to show the level of the level of learning that's lost. So for example, if a student is out for 14 days this time of the school year, how does that reflect the learning? And it also gives us, in addition, it gives us an opportunity to send out very specific cards, letters that are explicitly aligned to the level of attendance. This is something that I will frankly say that we have pulled dropout prevention people from home visiting to do. It is very intensive work. I think that we will gain back these funds in a very short period of time by being able to use the technology. I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Keisha Red-Hannons and our supervisor for research and assessment, Mr. Nguyen, for bringing this to our attention. We previously had analyzed this type of work with other technology companies such as Everyday Labs and an element of Blackboard, but this particular solution allows us to seamlessly interconnect Power Schools that we already have a very strong relationship and connection to the Power Schools platform. And this allows this seamless connection, seamless integration, and the opportunity for us to bring information about our students right at our fingertips.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward, and to others who are searching for tools and solutions to help increase our attendance. So 2 questions. One question is, what reporting in terms of data capabilities does this component have that will allow us to see in some real time how our efforts are being received as it relates to attendance?
Question. Okay, I was waiting for the second one. You said 2. So for example, Dr. Yarbrough, chronic absenteeism occurs at multiple levels. And so we have students who are 6 to 10 days chronically absent, and we have students who are 10 to 15 days, right? That are all falling within that chronic absenteeism range. We will be able to, in real time, reach those families, and we'll also be able to see what their responses are. We'll also, did they respond? Because we have the two-way component, we'll be able to say, yes, we received your message, here is the reason, we need support. So we will have that real-time response from our families who are critical to this work around their ability to understand what we're sharing with them and their response. We'll also be able to see whether or not there is improvement within a short or reasonable period of time based on the outreach. The two-way communication is powerful in that we'll either be sending those text messages or letters, and we will give our families the opportunity to respond immediately to the information that we're sending out to them.
Thank you. And I would be interested in seeing sometime kind of aggregated data that's not confidential to see kind of where we are and how we progress. My second question is about what preventative tools or aspects come with this program. I recognize that once a student is 6 days late or 10 days late, I mean, they're chronic. It's kind of done. But I'm curious what is available to send communication to parents to reach out to ask if anything would be helpful before a child is in jeopardy, and maybe even provide graphics that say, you know, because you're attending, you're gaining this much of what's being presented, which is kind of counter to the other information, which is your absence and you're missing X, Y, and Z. Maybe we can show kind of what they're gaining. But any aspects that are preventative with this software?
Well, I just first want to thank you very much for asking that question about prevention, because it gives me an opportunity to raise to you that our work is grounded in a multi-tiered system of supports, which is we're looking at all students. And it was very important for us when we work with Power Schools that this work is grounded within that multi-tiered system of supports. What that means is we are looking at all students at various points in the work. Which students are attending great, and that's literally how Power Schools identify them, and how do we support those families and thank them and encourage them and engage them. And then which students who are at risk but not yet chronically absent, right? So they are in that mode where you talk about preventative. We're seeing a student who is missing 5 to 6 days. They're not necessarily chronically absent, but we want to make that outreach. We're noticing this. How can we help? Here are some supports that we have available. It was important to us in selecting this intervention suite, and I know we should say intervention/prevention, but it was important for us that this work is grounded within our approach to this work, which is looking at all students foundationally, and then moving up that pyramid, if you will, that to see where students are at risk and where students are who have greater needs, and certainly students who have extreme needs. This is totally aligned to our approach and to our value system, yes.
Great, thank you. I have one more question, a third question. In terms of the costs, so I think typically in my observation, software prices tend to increase, even if it may cost them less to make what they're making. Maybe there are other costs that increase associated with it. Is this a one-year contract? Is there an opportunity if we say we like this and it's actually working extremely well for our goals, that we can have a rate that is, I guess, whether we can investigate a multi-year contract or something that will allow us to have a better idea of what the ongoing cost may be. Because I recognize this is not this is a license to use the software for a period of time. It's not them actually giving us the software and then selling us updates later.
Right. So, as you know, in other areas, Dr. Yarbrough, we do intense negotiations. In this particular case, we rely on our research, our IT team. However, we did have very intensive conversations and deep conversations with them about offering us the best possible deal, given that we have this long-term relationship with Power Schools, and they did come back a couple of times with better pricing. Assistant Superintendent Red Hannons was privy to some of that conversation. So our goal is to first see the impact and the value that this is having for us in this short-term agreement or this short-term project purchase order that we have, and to use that information to revisit the long-term possibilities. The negotiations, which I'm sure I'll be a part of, will be in alignment with the work of the negotiations that occur with our research office as well as with our IT department.
Thank you for your work on this, and thank you for negotiating as well.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, thank you. I'll also note that about a quarter of the cost looks like it's startup one-time costs. So those, I guess, would occur in future years. Personally, I like expanding on existing platforms rather than bringing in new platforms. Makes data transfer, et cetera, easier. Power School is what we're using for a variety of other things. I did take a good look at everything that they post on their site in terms of what the service makes available. I could see for some of this from a parent standpoint, I wish it was in place when I had one of my attendance challenged children in the schools. The being able to get notices about attendance issues in, same day, rather than finding out at a parent-teacher conference, mid-year would have been very helpful. My suggestion would be that I imagine we're going to be hearing about attendance periodically throughout the year, maybe in one of the presentations related to attendance at a board meeting, that this use of this software could be highlighted in the presentation of the data, just so that we can kind of see how it's working. It looks like that's what it's built for in part, so I imagine you'd be doing that anyways, but
correct.
I think we're really going to we have fundings in this funding source, is my understanding currently, but then moving into the next year, everything's going to need to, all software pieces, et cetera, are going to have to earn their place,
Correct.
fit into the budget picture, I'm sure. So that'll help us evaluate how it's being used and how useful it is. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, and to the topic of parent communication, when it's appropriate, and if there is a presentation and a parent is willing to share a quote or actually speak around what interactions with the software they find to be valuable in terms of notifications or maybe help and outreach, that would be interesting also to hear, to give us a sense of how parents are interacting on this particular topic of attendance.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
All right. Hearing nothing else on this, let's move on to purchase order number 2, which is CDW. Ms. Herrera?
Good afternoon. This is CDW for Sophos. I just wanted to make note, this is a contract. This is going to be a multi-year contract. Usually I do a year for Sophos, and that's why it's usually a purchase order. And I must have been placed there because usually they're licenses and they go through purchase order. But I'm trying to do a 3-year contract this year because this will save the district about $50,000 per year. We did a demo. We have been running a demo. We're currently running a demo. We are utilizing the council to look at the threats via email and any kind of bad doers. We have been doing management of it. Also, if you notice, you have been getting messages that say, no, you cannot do that. And it quarantines a lot of the emails that we consider to be outside source. This contract will be additional $29,000 because we did utilize paid license and additional features that we put into the district. And this will be going, once it goes to the finance, we'll go into the full board and then moving on to the alders.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. And so, Ms. DeMayo, a question for you is, is this a category change when this goes to the board?
Yes, I will make the category change and put it under contracts.
You'll go under contracts and
I'll make a note in the minutes.
okay. And could we also, I think when we've done these in the multi-years in the past, we make note that it's what the fiscal year amount is. I'm trying to remember. I think we've done that in the past where it's just making it clear that it's not the entire 327,000 in one fiscal year. That's actually over 3 years. I saw Mr. Lamb had his hand up. You're muted.
What we have done in the past with some of the multi-year contracts is list out each year of the contract with the cost.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I think that'd be good, just to make it clear to the other board members that that's not all at once. Ms. Herrera, you also had something more?
Yeah, inside of the documentation provided, if you note, the 327,880 is the 3-year contract, and then there's 109,293.33. That's the yearly payment. It's noted
Okay.
in the contract.
So that information's right there for
Yes, it is.
for people putting together the agenda for the next board meeting. Okay, so when we move this, we'll move it as a contract and not a purchase order. You've explained it. We'll list out the price per fiscal year to make it clear. And you also indicated, just like anything does, it's a multi-year. After from the board, it goes to the alders for final approval because they approve all true multi-year contracts. Anything else on this item? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, Ms. Herrera, I just want to thank you for the forethought and seeing any financial advantage to making this a multi-year contract. And I think I heard from you, what you said might be $50,000 savings to the district each year. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
All right, hearing nothing else on that, let's go ahead and move into the change orders, the first one of which is with Connecticut Controls. Mr. Rowling?
Yes, good evening again. This is going to be change order number 2 that we're requesting for CT Controls. CT Controls does all of the HVAC controls for all of our buildings. So all of the air handlers and all of the equipment, the mechanical equipment that operates our HVAC system, CT Controls currently services that equipment. We've had some extensive repairs that had to be done for the closing of the season for the summer, for cooling, and then going into the wintertime for the heating season. So there is a memo that's been written by our manager for HVAC that is attached to the documentation that gives some explanation there. In addition, I just want to add on that Honeywell, who originally had a part of the controls for our HVAC system, all the servers that go into operating that equipment is no longer being serviced by Honeywell due to their inability to service that equipment. And therefore, those dollars are not being used right now. That's an additional $202,000 that is allotted as part of our budget for the year. And therefore, CT Controls has been doing that work, which is why a lot of their costs have gone up and the amount of money we're spending has gone beyond the cost or the allotted amount for the contract for this fiscal year. We are putting the contract back out to bid for next year to cover the services that are needed on both sides. But in the meantime, we'll need these dollars to keep the HVAC equipment up and running to the best of our ability. Any questions?
Right, comments or questions from the committee? All right, and you also note here and on the description and in the memo is that this is due to a loss of a vendor. So it's kind of redistributing work. Okay, I had nothing else on this one, so let's move on to change order number 2 with Tucker Mechanical.
Thank you. Tucker Mechanical is a very similar situation. Again, increase of HVAC failures and services that we had to perform in the last several months. This particular one is for Tucker Mechanical, and what's also noted inside of the memorandum is that Bovair, who was another vendor of ours that was servicing our HVAC equipment, they had chosen eventually to not renew their contract, even though initially they decided they would do so. That contract value was $200,000 for the year, and so that work is now being given to Tucker Mechanical for them to perform the services, and therefore increasing the costs so far for the amount of services they're providing.
All right, thank you. And if I remember correctly, the goal is to have multiple vendors for these things. So just for situations like this, so you can distribute the work, and if something goes wrong with one vendor, there's other vendors involved. Mr. Lamb, your hand's up.
Just to add in to what Mr. Aliane is talking about, we have struggled with our HVAC vendors, and Tucker Mechanical has really risen to the occasion more than one time to help service the district. We've gone through the small business development group to do some small projects and some small service, but given our size and scope of work, Tucker Mechanical has really been the only vendor that we've had confidence in that is going to be able to do the work well, do it once, and get us back online as quickly as possible. And that has proven itself even today with one of the schools that went down and needed a immediate repair. So as much as we would like to have the redundancy, and we would like to go out to bid and get that redundancy, it's just not out there in the marketplace.
Okay, thank you for that. And of course, some of this is also connected to aging systems, and a lot of work has been done by you and your team to get these systems funding identified to replace these systems, including seeking state funds, et cetera. So thank you for that. Maybe someday all our HVAC systems will be within service life and wonderful. That'd be great, I imagine. All right, hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to, we have 2 Head Start certifications. Ms. Derwin.
Okay, these certifications are basically part of the Head Start application process, seeking board approval to apply for an application to carry over basic funds and COVID funds. The basic funds are approximately $1,100,000, and the COVID funds are $68,000. There are spending plans that go with them, and it extends from recruitment to professional development, instructional supplies, medical supplies, furniture, professional learning, technology, and also some family events. We're trying to leverage the money to not only impact the Head Start students, but to devote some money to some outdoor learning experiences and working on playgrounds in the district, family recruitment events that include educational components like literacy nights, math nights, where they can serve as recruiting events, purchasing car seats, and doing professional development that will impact all the preschool teachers in the district.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? I had none, and that was the first one, right?
That was the two of them
The
combined.
two of them combined.
One is to carry over basic funds, the other is to carry over the remainder of the COVID funds. Basically, we're trying to carry over, leave no dollars on the table.
Okay. And just as a reminder for folks, this is periodically the requirements of a funder is that the board specifically approves the application and not just the receipt of the funds, even though, I mean, personally, I think you all go get all the money you can get for the schools. But periodically we have to jump through some hoops. So, all right, hearing no other comments or questions related to these, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to move these. I move that we send to the board with a recommendation to approve these 9 agreements. The contract number 1 with Connecticut Customs, the contract with CDW, the purchase order with Power School, and the 2 change orders and the 2 Head Start certifications.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? I was just trying to make it clear because we had 1 contract withdrawn and 1 category change into that. So hopefully I got it right. So we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and I don't see President Rivera, so the motion carries. And we'll send those on. We'll move into the discussion items, the first of which is the December 23 financial report. So Ms. Hannons, you and anybody you need to bring in, please share your screen. Enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. This is the financial report for the period ended December 31st of this fiscal year. And as we all know what the strategic plan is for 2024, and we always show that at the beginning of any presentation that we make. Okay, the month and included in this report is the monthly financial report for December 31st, and then the monthly financial report for the grants as well. So we're going to start with the general fund financial report. And as you can see at the bottom, I don't have good news on this report. We've increased our deficit due to some other areas that we found out were happening this year. And if you recall, whenever I talk about our mitigation plans or what we're planning on doing to, reduce the deficits, I always talk about going after grants and making sure that if indirect costs are allowable, that we will put those in the grants. And we did what's happening with one of our interdistrict grants is that due to the salary increases and other increases, we will not be getting the anticipated indirect cost money that we thought we would get. The reason being is that the the interdistricts grant is what's happening with that is that the funds that we're getting by all the large salary increases with the teachers and the administrators and any other pending agreements have eaten away at the indirect cost that we would be able to charge off on a particular grant. And what we normally do, the rate is now down to 5.25%. However, if we find that a grant is just barely paying their cost of operating, we know then that we can't charge indirect costs because there's no availability. So that adds to what we wouldn't get from the general fund. So we had to take that revenue away. So that's why that number is going in the wrong direction. And again, we are still looking at everything that we have to make sure that, we're still trying to mitigate, but we had mitigated for this fiscal year. One of our mitigation plans was that we were going to see if we could increase enrollment in our interdistrict magnet schools. And right now, I think we're down, last number I heard was 85 students. So that's what's causing a trickle down effect with our general fund budget. If you want, next slide. Oh, what happened here? And then with the grant, okay, next slide, please. Next slide. You can keep going all the way to right there. Okay, so then it changes from the previous report. I tried to, put in here what's happening for each financial report. So we're having overtime costs are increasing due to vacancies not being filled in the custodial and security, and the amount of services that we have to provide that are increasing our costs as well. And then I did mention the interdistrict. And I will correct this to that statement number 3 to include the indirect cost reduction. Next slide. And then the mitigation efforts, nothing has changed. We're still working on, we do this every day. We're working on ways to try to reduce costs and save money. Right now we're cleaning up. Cleaning up is not the good word, but for all the purchase orders that came in through July, we are going through to make sure that those services were provided. And if they weren't, of course, they won't be provided, because you can't back provide a service. So we're looking at that. And then we're still working with the team on the custodial and the security overtime. We're trying to see what we can do to reduce some of those costs. And then we just continue to take a look at all expenses and budget lines to see where we can make further cuts, as long as we do not affect the students. We're still using ARP ESSER funding, which was sunset in September, and these are some of the areas that we're looking at, and even going forward for this fiscal summer 2024, we're doing an early take on what courses really need to be done and how we can maybe streamline those. And we've just started those discussions, so there'll be more to come on that at a later time. And then the unknowns are still the utilities, the oil and electric. We're thinking maybe we could save money there, but today is not a good example to mention that one. Retirement payouts, we don't know how many people will be leaving. We do have a handle on the administrators that are leaving, because you have to put that in by December. So we will have an idea on at some point on what that's going to cost us. And then we still have a few pending union contracts out there that we're still waiting for, plus the snow removal costs, any litigation costs, and any emergencies that may pop up. And I understand that we've had a few. The financial report for the grants is self-explanatory. We're at, as you can see, we're starting to trend the other way in terms of the money that we previously had. And as you can see, the reds are the differences now. So while some grants will go away entirely, there are some grants that still have another year to work on. So, but this just basically shows you where we were, what we received for this fiscal year, what's still pending out there, and our new anticipated funding, and then the total available funds for this fiscal year. So you can see from 22-23 to 23-24, that number 2, so there's a 58% reduction. And then this report here just basically shows where we are, the budget at this point right now, the year-to-date actuals, and what we've encumbered, and the available budget thus far. This slide here, as always, just tells you how to read the previous slide. And then the next 2 slides are just the information I just provided, but in a different way, so that you can actually see where our funds are and how we're using them. Are there any questions?
Comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you for presenting the data and just keeping on top of our finances and what we are will experience soon. For the topic of the overtime for I think the area of custodial services and security, where I think we have vacancies. How much do we know about our vacancies being due to our pay level versus current people who are on the market looking to work in those areas? Are we not paying enough, or is it that people
I'm going to
are
allow
for employment in those roles right now?
I'm going to allow Mr. Lamb to answer that.
Sure. Dr. Yarbrough, we just went through our collective bargaining with that union, and their salaries are market rate, and in line with what our surrounding towns are. Some surrounding towns have different positions, so their scale of rate is a little different. We have one position, one rate. So based on what we have, we are market comparable with surrounding areas.
Thank you. And if we look at in the non-academic realm, so outside of education, if we look at the private sector or government, how do our rates compare for security and custodial services?
That information I don't have with me. I can certainly work with our labor attorney who put together the package to compare across markets, what that would look like. If that information is not available, potentially we can work with human resources to look at that. But if there's not a lot of information available, we may not be able to do an accurate comparison.
Thank you very much. My second question is, in terms of our budget categories, are any of them at this point overspent or close to being spent, such that if we continue to approve contracts at the same rate that we are now, that category is going to be overspent?
Good question. The answer would be in most cases, yes. And I'll tell you why. To go back to explain the budget. Like say we asked for 11 million, and I think we did ask for 11.8, something like that, but I think we got 8 million. So what happens is we automatically walk into a rolling deficit. What we then try to do is, as we all know, we can only put the budget on the system that equals what the funds that they gave us for.
Yes.
So what we normally would do is we would go in and say, okay, fine, well, we got $8 million. Let's spread it across. So that's why you'll notice like a category like transportation is always overspent, because you can't budget transportation to the amount that it's really going to cost you. So then we'll say, okay, fine, well, we'll put like a few dollars in teachers, a few dollars, but no one actually gets the amount of money that they're entitled to, because we didn't get the amount of money that we need to operate. So you're always going to see a deficit in lines until, like say, if I showed you 11 million and this is what we need, that's that first column when we do the original budget. That's what we really need in that column. But because we only got say Z instead of Y, then we have to build a budget based on how much money that we actually receive, knowing that it's not enough and there will be deficits. So no one ever is fully funded. We try, even when we have plans to put the things that we want to do with the budget, we can't adequately fund it because there's not enough money left in the pot.
Okay. Thank you. To that insight, maybe on a special report or sometime where we do a final facial comparison. It might be meaningful to, next to what our actual budget is, to have a column that shows our requested budget and where our expenses fall in between what we've requested and what we have received. I wonder if there is a thought that we are requesting more than what we actually need. And because we are never really given what we request, and you and your team's effort have, and all the people across the district in the school system have made it work with great sacrifice, then the conclusion may come back, well, you don't actually need what you're asking for. But it might be worth, before mitigation strategies, to have a column that shows here's what we requested. And if we were given this, we would be in line with or close to being in line with what we anticipated our expenses would be. Right. I would defer to Mr. Wilcox and others on the board and the superintendent in terms of whether or not that's useful. But in terms of just what I'm thinking about, it would be nice to know, how close our estimates are to representing what we actually need and expect for a given school year. So thank you for your work, your team's work. Ms. Bourne, thank you for your work.
Thank you for your support. And I just want to say too, that's why I try to, with the grant side, and I think I show it just about every budget year. If we go back and look at the budget ask and then where the money is spent, you will that page will show, and I always put that in front of folks. That page will clearly show that 51% of our funding comes from grant sources. And as you can see now on the last page of the special funds page, you can see that is going in the opposite direction. And we are going to be hit with some large, some holes, because we won't be able to. Right now, the grants basically cover the programs. I think we all did a good job of not putting staff on those grants. We basically put in programs and things that the schools needed. We stayed away from hiring because we knew at the end of the day, we wouldn't be able to sustain those positions. So, while we've done that, we really need to look at other ways of, I guess, getting revenue. And I think Mr. Wilcox mentions it all the time that, with the state and what we really need proposed to what we get, we have been lucky in terms of being able to support our deficits by, making some changes. But that's going to be a thing of the past unless we get some new influx of revenue.
Ms. Hannah, can I make a comment as well? I think it's important to note, Dr. Yarborough, that we aren't asking for what we don't need. I think at the second half of the year, everybody is making sacrifices to get to the bottom line, whether it be tutors stopping earlier in the year, or feel it's not happening, or contracts for facilities waiting to another year. We're getting to that point using these sacrifices to get us to the end, as well as using the grants. And I think those sacrifices will get larger as we start losing the grants. So it's important then to say what we budgeted for, and then maybe what we weren't able to do as well, because we don't want that message out that we're getting to the end goal because we asked for too much and we were able to support it with grants. We stopped services along the way to get us to that bottom line.
Correct.
I think it's reasonable to share that information, those stories, those narratives. They're not pretty, but to the degree that they're true and really affect our students, we should let it be known that this is what's happening, that in order to respect the budget, certain services and other things are being cut short and people are making very specific sacrifices. Ultimately, our students are making sacrifices kind of outside of their own choice. But thank you very much for bringing that forward.
I'd just like to build on that. I do think that telling the story of that sacrifice that's coming is a good thing to be able to try to capture. And because, you know, we have mid-year deficits, and then for the last, I think, 4 years at least, have finished with you know, balanced budgets. But as you're alluding to, it's with a lot of second part of the year sacrifices, and being able to kind of say that it's the numbers on the page don't tell the story, that there's now going to be less tutoring in these 5 schools or these 20 schools, and there's going to be less field trips or less this, less that, because we're trying to come into those numbers. I think that, and then we also have coming up, I'm trying to remember which meeting, the next one or the following one, I'm trying to remember, sometime in the next month or so, the staffing guidelines updating, which is showing the deficit in staff of what the kids should have based on national standards, for instance, for caseloads for social workers or number of librarians a district would have, and then also needs in the district for other categories like building climate specialists, et cetera, that could also lead to less disciplinary issues and maybe greater attendance in schools, that those things are a deficit as well. And that's not even in the picture. That's, and I think we added that, Dr. Yarbrough, from some of your suggestions, that we need to tell the story of what's needed, that a bare bones, keep the lights on budget is not inspirational. It's not, we're not highlighting what we could have and what other districts are able to afford. And I think that this is one of the wealthiest states in the entire country, and better equitable funding for school districts, even though Connecticut does a pretty good job compared to abysmal jobs other states do. There's still a lot that needs to be done, and we need to be able to tell the story over and over again and better and better. To that end, I do think the numbers that are standing out, I did hear explanations as to the variances that you're projecting in some of the salary information. I also see big variance in the transportation. So maybe this next report, if we could have a little bit of extra information about these major drivers of the deficit, just so that we can better understand them and the public can better understand them. I think that would be great. And so I don't know, for instance, the transportation, is that number going to be whittled down over time, or is that, like, how strong is that projection, and what are the drivers of it? I know part of it is the 1-year contract we have, and that's just, you know, when you have a number of routes going to a certain number of schools, they cost money, but also if there's other drivers of that would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, that's what we are working on as we finish the report. We're working on, okay, taking a deep dive into all of those, you know, some of the numbers and why, you know, why they're changing. So, but we wanted to make sure that in this particular report that we wanted to highlight, you know, some of the problems with the cost rising, the salary rising, and now the money that we would be able to claim for indirect costs, which of course has always helped us with our budget, is no longer available.
Yeah.
And that's the sacrifice that we make because we want to make sure that the classrooms have teachers and that folks have what they need. So it's like the office would take the hit of not being able to pull down money to provide for indirect costs.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing on that. And also just want to thank the district. Having heard when I first got on the board, people still with kind of the, I know the right word, still harmed by the effects of the ending of the TIF grant, where so many salary lines were on grant funds and the grant ran out. So I've been reading in the paper other districts that did a bunch of hiring on the ESSER funds and so on, and this district was building infrastructure, buying curricula, doing training, building out classrooms, hydroponic learning experiences for students, et cetera, as opposed to we're gonna, it sounds like, have some serious deficits moving forward in what we're able to afford in the next fiscal year. And it is nice that you all, through your efforts, have minimized the harm to direct harm to staff. I mean, there's always a harm to staff having to do without, and harm to students having to do without, in terms of some of the things that other districts are able to do. But thank you for that.
And thank you all for your support. I work with a great team, and everybody is chipping in when they need to, and even when they don't need to, and the board has been very supportive, and I just want to thank each of you and the superintendent for your support.
All right, thank you. If there's nothing else in this item, looking at the agenda, briefly, just a quick update. I've had some conversations with Ms. DeMayo, and I know that staff have been working on, they have some revisions to the cover memo. This is also related to the procurement policy. We need to be seeking a meeting on this with the folks on the city side to be able to finalize what we need to make changes in terms of our purchasing policy, because some of the thresholds and things changed. This is also a good time to just make sure that our policy is in line with city requirements. And then finally, there's, my understanding is, the procurement person that the board is paying for, that person is in the hiring process and hopefully is going to be in place in February, so that we'll also not only have the assistance on that, but also a person who's going to understand our policies and procedures and help us connect up with the city purchasing requirements. Did I capture everything, Ms. DeMayo? Okay.
Good job. Yes.
I do know we need to probably start, it's probably good to get it on a calendar, having some sort of meeting with the city side to just talk about what specific changes are required, so that we can make sure everything is up to date, the amounts are the same, or is what they need to be. And if there's anything else we need to make changes on, that everybody understands what we're doing, and that things are in place. So that's the update on those two items. And seeing as we've reached the end of the agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded, and let's go ahead and vote. But before we vote, I just want to say I did notice it earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt to call it out, but I did notice the newest member of the team, the young Ms. Lamb, made an appearance at the beginning of the meeting, and I forgot to mention it. And then when I was going to, she had disappeared, probably enjoying her snow day.
I noticed it as well. We have to recruit her to the board.
Okay.
Let's
take the vote.
out in the snow.
All right, let's vote. Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for
Thank
the
you,
time.
everyone.